Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 7 o'clock. We are going to call our agenda for the special political law forum meeting for the prosecutor's office. I want to welcome you to this forum. We have two honored guests here, two interesting people from candidates for this position. But before, I just want to make a couple of preliminary announcements. You should have signed in, if you could. There's a sign-in sheet at the door. And in order to facilitate the process of broadcasting this and doing everything with the Tea Party, there are two donation barrels over there if you want to contribute to help the Tea Party put on these forums. We are in peculiar times, I understand that, but we are trying to do our best to facilitate an educational and informational format here for the citizens of Lapeer County. So we will start with Carol, if you would. Everybody stand.
Father, we invite your presence here tonight. Let your peace abide in us and in this place. Our nation and the world have endured yet another health situation, but you have been there for us continually. Thank you. Tonight we are focusing upon the upcoming local Lapeer County Prosecutor position to be voted on Tuesday, August 4th. Give these candidates wisdom and peace as they answer the questions given to them by the moderator in the audience. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. And if Veterans Timothy would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge us to
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right. Now, before we start the introductions of our candidates, I want to instruct the audience, if you have a question, I don't know if we have the postcards. I don't believe we have that. But if you do have a question...
Yes, we do.
We do.
We do.
We will be passing out postcards during the preliminary matters here. If you have any kind of question that you would like to pose to the candidate, you will get it back to our screeners. They will retrieve them, screen them, and then bring it to I'll be the moderator, of course, and then I'll read it to them. And I will interrupt whatever questioning I will do to take the audience questions in their order. So I will interrupt what I have to do to take your questions so that the candidates can be informed for what you guys in the audience would like to hear addressed. All right. With that said, now we have our two candidates. We have the incumbent, Michael J. Sharkey. He is our prosecuting attorney in Lapeer County presently. And we have the challenger. And the challenger is John Miller, a practicing attorney who was previously a member of the Lapeer County Prosecutor's Office. All right. I didn't flip a coin, so I will... does either one of you like to go first? We will be rotating questions in order.
The incumbent should go first.
Okay, the incumbent. I will let Mr. Sharkey.
You said? What do you want?
Or you can take it out and put it back.
Well, if I put it here, John will be standing in front of me. So, I'll put it here. Can you hear me back there, everyone? I'm Mike Sharkey. I'm the Lapeer County Prosecuting Attorney. Most of you I know. Most of you have seen these types of debates before. It's kind of odd, if I may say, to start the debate here dealing with a number of people who have face masks on. We are in this obvious COVID lockdown, and It's been difficult for all of us. Our ways of doing business have dramatically changed. I'm seeking re-election to the Lapeer County Prosecuting Attorney's Office because I want to make sure that this community, it keeps going in the right direction. The objective, most importantly, of the Prosecuting Attorney's Office is to keep this community safe. I have nearly 4 years of experience as a prosecuting attorney. Most of you have probably heard of the stories that are reported, the types of cases that we've handled. I think those cases are good evidence of my ability to make good decisions, use good judgment, and to make sure that, again, this community is safe. About myself, I grew up here in Lapeer, went to grade school here in Lapeer, I went to high school, raised my family here, and I work here. I could have gone someplace else to work, but I've decided to stay here in Lapeer. I practiced over 30 years in private as a private practicing attorney. 30 years ago, I was the court-appointed magistrate and district court administrator. I have experience in administration. I'm proud of the way we've operated the office. I'm proud of the way that we have been able to keep the budget in check, and I am seeking to have the community support me and re-elect me to the office. This campaign, I believe, is not going to be a nice one. This campaign is going to be about dirty backroom politics. And what I suspect you're about to see is about every dirty political trick that you can imagine will come from this man. And I'm going to respond. And I'm going to tell you this man who is challenging me is not good for this community. He's not competent. He's not qualified. He's a part-time attorney. His full-time job is in sales. He has a criminal record. He has 3 drunk driving offenses. Now, he's going to try to tell you that he is, that was a long time ago and he's been dismissive of it. I think it's relevant, and I think he should tell us all about those events and why that would make him qualified to do this job. He's unethical. I have one example of another after another on how unethical he is. You'll hear about that. You'll also see how he has scammed the system as a prosecutor and worked a full-time job while he was an assistant. We'll get into the detail, I hope, for a lot of that. So hang on, we'll see.
I've been looking forward to this day because this is the day that the truth matters, and the truth will come out in this race. The truth about the shenanigans between this man and the judge sitting in the back will come to light. If they haven't already in the newspapers and you haven't heard it, you probably have been not paying close attention. My name is John Miller, and I am a candidate for the Office of Prosecuting Attorney. My record speaks for itself. I'm looking to replace the current incumbent in office because we can't afford 4 more years of this kind of nonsense. We need to get the community back behind law enforcement. We need to take back the courthouse. We need to start prosecuting warrants and doing the work of the people. The important work that law enforcement, the men and women in law enforcement are doing every day is not being addressed by this administration. This administration is a complete failure and a disservice to this community. And I have the numbers to prove it. And by the way, this race will be all about the facts, all about what the Office of Prosecuting Attorney does, and all about his track record. He will attack me with allegations of being unethical and not working the job and scamming the system, and it's all a bunch of bunk. That is a bunch of bunk because he is trying to turn your attention away from the deficient performance that his office has the record of for the last 3.5 years. Throughout my course in the last 3 years, I was the Chief Assistant Prosecuting Attorney for almost 3.5 years. Resigned from that office when this man won because I didn't want to work for him. During that time, I performed countless numbers of preliminary exams. I did more preliminary exams in district court, I hazard to guess, in 1 week than this man has done in 3.5 years. And if he says he has done them, just tell me the case number, and I'll put it on my website and retract that statement. I will. I'll put it on the Facebook page. I have handouts for everyone here that shows the numbers. The numbers don't lie. The numbers are what they are. I have a performance record of being your Chief Assistant Prosecutor, and I made the presentations to our Board of Commissioners. I presented the facts of the office to them. I wasn't hiding the ball from anyone. I came forward, I showed them what the numbers were of the office. I showed them the needs of the office. We were transparent. There is no transparency in this administration because they don't want you to see that he's working in private law practice the entire time. You've been paying this man over $100,000 a year to be your prosecuting attorney. Meanwhile, he's running his private law practice another block away from the county building. It's kind of comical to most of the people that work in the county building because they laugh that he parks his truck in the same parking lot as most of the employees and then walks the extra block over to his private law practice. If you don't believe me, you don't have to. Just ask somebody that works in the building. His own staff will tell you he's never there. The only day he shows up is circuit court criminal docket on Monday afternoons. And that's because he can be seen. Other than that, he's over handling cases in his private law practice, representing individuals that have cases against Oregon Township, against Marathon Township, representing individuals trying to restore their driver's license with the Secretary of State, when he is the individual in our prosecuting attorney's office that is responsible for representing the people of the state of Michigan in opposing those driver's licenses or being a checkpoint for those individuals that should get their license back. I'm going to put this on this chair. It's a real short presentation. Please take it. There's multiple copies there. I'll put it on my website, on my Facebook page. Lastly, I want to address. This man accuses me of having made mistakes in my past. Have I made mistakes in my past? Absolutely. Do those mistakes define who we are, who I am? There's not a person in this world who hasn't made a mistake at some point in their life. That does not define who they are. After I made my mistakes in this life, I turned my life in a positive direction. I took responsibility for those mistakes over 20 years ago. I turned my life in a positive direction. Went back to a master's degree in public administration, obtained that degree with 2 children and a wife. Went back to law school, working full-time, 3 children and a wife. Worked my way through law school. I have business interests, absolutely. My criminal history is no more relevant than this man leaving his wife at the altar with a church full of people on their first wedding day. It's not relevant.
That never happened. That's the kind of honesty you'll get because it never happened.
All right, wait a second. I just want to interject here.
Make it up as you go along.
But this is the Lapeer Tea Party forum. This is not a massive debate per se. What I had asked you gentlemen to do in the introductory remarks was to address information about yourself and communicate that information to the public so that the public can be informed about what you gentlemen have to offer. Now, if on the campaign trail, you can address these issues. But for this particular forum, I want to caution you that we need to be neutral and respectful to the citizens here. So I just wanted to interject that comment. And
So would you like us to give us a minute each to
I
follow
will,
that format?
if in fact, a comment is made with reference in answer to a generic question that I give you, and the name is interjected of your opponent, that opponent may have 1 minute to reply. Okay? So I'm going to start the forum here. I'm going to ask the first question, and I'm going to start with Mr. Miller on this one. Describe the qualifications and experiences that make you the best candidate for the prosecutor's office.
Great question. I'm going to start off real short and brief. I mentioned I was in a different career prior to becoming an attorney. Went back to law school later in life. When I went back to law school, I was a prosecuting intern in my 3rd year in law school. I prosecuted cases without any oversight from other prosecutors after I got the hang of it. I was pretty good at it. When, on the 2nd day of that activity, I decided I love this job. This is a great opportunity to do good things for the public and work alongside law enforcement in all the things that law enforcement does for our community. I don't think there has been one jury trial that my opponent can say that he has handled as a prosecutor. I've handled several. I've handled preliminary exams on the basis when I was the chief assistant prosecuting attorney, sometimes 2 a day. Most of the times 3 or 4 a week was not uncommon. I was in court every single day working alongside law enforcement. In the course of that, I developed a terrific rapport with law enforcement. I was a prosecutor that they could trust in the courtroom to get their case done effectively and efficiently. I handled several hundred cases a year as a prosecutor. In vertical prosecution, that means from the time the warrant request comes into the office, I review it, I authorize charges, it goes out. If it's a felony, it goes through a preliminary exam. I conduct that preliminary exam with my officers, introduce evidence, and take it from there all the way to trial and circuit court if need be. So my experience speaks for itself. And you don't have to take my word for it. Ask a law enforcement officer who they want to be in court with. Myself or this man.
Mr. Sharkey, same question.
Could you repeat it for me?
Yes. Describe the qualifications and experiences that make you the best candidate for the prosecutor's office. Your time is money.
My concern is how we as prosecuting attorneys in this community, again, can keep this community safe. I have how many time do we have?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. I have a list of cases here that I would like to get to and show you exactly how it is, how I handle these types of cases. Cases that I handle personally for the prosecuting attorney's office. The Ken Russell case happens to be a situation where a man high under the influence, driving down the street, Nipissing Street, going 50 miles an hour, high on marijuana, takes out a woman, Miss Chambers. 5 children she has, is taken out by a drunk driver, someone under the influence, and she's dead. That was my case. That case, the defendant pled guilty as charged, no reduction, no discount whatsoever. Burns, under the influence, driving down M24, crosses the center line, takes out 2 people. 2 people dead because of operating under the influence. Alcohol, cocaine. dead. So when you hear Mr. Miller say, these are mistakes, Mr. Miller, you tell that to those families who lost their loved ones in a lawsuit by those who are operating under the influence. That's not a mistake, that's a crime. You are a convicted criminal, Miller.
Mr. Miller, you want to reply?
Absolutely.
You have 1 minute.
I don't believe that he's ever conducted trials as a prosecuting attorney, but I have, and I've conducted felony drunk driving trials, and I've sent individuals who were charged with drunk driving to jail in circuit court trials. That's not a question. That's not any question other than fact. That is a fact. So if he's here to tell me that I'm not fit to send drunk drivers and hold people accountable back to jail, or hold them accountable or responsible for the crimes they commit, he's totally mistaken. You're listening to a man that hasn't even conducted a jury trial as a prosecuting attorney.
You have 1 minute.
I've tried cases for over 35 years. We're going to talk about an experience. You brought up Judge Conchu. Judge Conchu picked me to take on the case, probably the biggest case in this county. And the results are an outright dismissal of all criminal charges. I've handled cases in the federal court. I've handled cases in the circuit court. In just about every county in this state of Michigan, in the lower area. I know how to try a case. I've been a trial lawyer in a case over in the Genesee County. I was the only white person in the crowd. I've tried cases in Lapeer County where I represented the only black man on trial. I've won all these cases. Miller can't win a case. He can't litigate a case, and maybe I'll get a chance to talk about his litigation experience.
Mr. Sharkey, you may stand right there. The next question is for you. Explain what you believe are the most significant issues in the list.
The most significant issue in this case, or in this campaign, is the integrity of the candidate. Someone who is trustworthy, someone who is knowledgeable, someone who has experience. Someone who's ethical, someone who follows the rules, someone who makes decisions based on the facts and the evidence of a case, and does not abuse the authority of the office for their own personal gain. And I can talk about all those issues if I get the chance.
Mr. Miller, you're clear.
The hypocrisy of that statement is monumental. Monumental. Judicial Tenure Commission conducted an investigation. It's right here. It's on the Judicial Tenure Commission website. Go look at it. Formal complaint number 100, Appendix C. 150 times, this man charged a defendant with a crime in front of Judge Conchu. Neither one of them ever saw fit to declare to the defendants, the litigants before them, Judge Conchu allegedly owes him $415,000. 150 times they have. That's only misdemeanor cases. Felony cases, they have another 50 times. 200 times. Both of them knew it. Both of them said nothing. Never told the poor individual that was there facing charges in district court, hey, Mr. Defendant, this judge owes that prosecutor $415,000 allegedly. Do you think there's a conflict? Do you think you're going to have your fair day in court? You don't need a law degree to understand that that is probably the low watermark of ethics and integrity.
You may respond. 1 minute.
But I didn't mention his name.
Well, you did.
pointed your finger at me.
Well, he did mention the prosecutor with response to the...
Let me be clear about this issue. First, the ethical issue. Judge Conchu is a good man. He's an ethical man. There was complete disclosure of the relationship of Judge Conchu to me. And it didn't have to come to some sort of actual per case disclosure. There was. There was a written disclosure for each case. Each case I was there was a full disclosure. But let me be clear. That $400,000 is something I earned. And I'm telling you, I'm very proud of that. And I earned every penny of it. And the results make the difference.
Okay. Question number 3, I'm going to have Mr. Miller address this because this seems to be on the same track. What differentiates you from your opponent? So I guess we're going down that line.
What differentiates me from my opponent, and I think which differentiates me as an attorney altogether from most people in the practice, is that I was in a different profession before becoming an attorney. And I think that gives me a real world perspective that ordinary people can relate to. I've been on that side. I've had people owe money to the corporation I worked for. I had to appear in court. I didn't understand the process. I have a better connection with ordinary people than this man does. And for that matter, having made mistakes in my life and stood up and took responsibility for that, absolutely am I more qualified. Because when a defendant comes in front of me as a prosecutor, I'm in the best position then because I have made mistakes in my life and I know what it takes to turn my life in a positive direction and pull myself up by my bootstraps. Better than probably any defendant or almost any prosecutor out there. I challenge you to find another prosecutor that has actually suffered the conviction that I have suffered and turned around and sent somebody back to jail for it.
Okay, Mr. Sharkey. 2 minutes.
The problem, though, John, is it ties to the first question about the ethical prerequisites and qualifications of the candidate. You call it mistakes. I've already addressed that. Those are criminal offenses. And to show how unethical you are, you didn't tell the prosecuting attorney who hired you about your criminal past. You didn't tell Judge Holoka about your criminal past. Your appointment as the Chief Assistant Prosecuting Attorney was an illegitimate appointment. You had part-time experience, you tried one case, you lost it, the Witt case, it went up on appeal for ineffective assistance of counsel. Miller has tried 2 cases since he's been out of the prosecutor's office, and he lost them both. One, a drunk driving case, which is also another ineffective assistance of counsel. He stipulated to the admission of a videotape as a defense attorney. The videotape had his client on it, admitting that he was too drunk to drive. Miller didn't object, but stipulated to the entry. The jury was out in less than 5 minutes, convicted. The other case is a simple matter. Maybe we'll get into that as well. But his client lost $150,000 because of your incompetence and inability to try a case.
Yeah. 1 minute. Rebuttal.
Simply not true. Simply not true. I don't think you guys want to be bored to tears about arguendo here. We're here to talk about the Office of the Prosecuting Attorney, the performance and aptitude that is happening now, which is spelled out right on this handout here on page 1. The Office of the Prosecuting Attorney in 2019 executed over 1,000 warrants fewer. Over 1,000 fewer warrants than my office and my administration did in 2014. That is not because crime is escaping Lapeer. That is because you have only 4 assistant prosecutors in the office now trying to carry the workload of 6 because he's running private practice. His chief assistant doesn't do work, doesn't authorize warrants. And what you have then is all the other prosecutors trying to do the work of the whole office and it can't be done. Went from 3,500 warrants down to 2,200. It's right on that graph. This is information that I FOIA'd from the courts and the sheriff's department.
All right, number 4, this is for Prosecutor Sharkey. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge facing the prosecutor's office, and how do you plan to address it?
Cameras this way. I have studied the operation of this office. I've studied the operation of the prosecuting attorney's offices across the state of Michigan. There are 83 different counties, 83 different prosecuting attorneys here. What my goal and objective is to apply to the prosecuting attorney's office is to make it the best that there is. I have experience in making things the best that they can be. When I was the district court attorney, or district court attorney magistrate, and administrator, we took the 71A district court and through my management skills, we were able to make the district court one of 11 courts in the entire United States of Michigan to serve as a model court. I'm proud of that. The objective is the same here. And the way you do that is you bring together a group of qualified, energetic, enthusiastic, ethical, hardworking people, and you can get the job done. I have a presentation for the budget for the county commissioners this year, and maybe we'll get a chance to get into it. I brought with it a schedule. This is a spreadsheet of how we can make that operation all the more efficient. Maybe we'll get to the detail, but I am confident that once the Board of Commissioners sees what I can present, we'll be moving in the same direction of making the office the best there is in the state of Michigan.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Making the office as best as it can be is being in support of law enforcement and having law enforcement's back. When they're out trying to solve a crime or trying to arrest an individual that's dangerous at 3 o'clock in the morning, he's told them, don't call me. We're not giving you legal advice. That is his office's policy. When he said that to the police chiefs, which is the sheriff, City of Lapeer Chief of Police, and the City Chief of Police, they about fell off their chairs, saying, wait a minute, you're not gonna, we have a question at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're gonna call the on-call prosecutor, you're telling us that you're not gonna give us the advice that we need to make sure that we're conducting an investigation and or an arrest that is consistent with the Constitution and laws of this state? That's not making it the best it can be. And in fact, I will tell you, if you ask anyone, Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan, they would roll on the floor laughing if they had heard that a prosecutor was telling his law enforcement community, don't call me for advice. I've been on call. I've taken the calls at 3 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day from an officer, had a roadside stop, somebody pulled a gun out. This stuff happens in the middle of the night. I've taken countless of those calls in the middle of the night. When I'm prosecuting attorney, my prosecutors will support our law enforcement. They will answer those questions. Quickly. First page of this presentation is the misdemeanor, felony, and juvenile warrant requests or authorizations by year. This page is more telling. Lapeer County Sheriff's Department, I FOIA'd this information. 1,684 cases requested warrants for over a 2-year period. Only 363 of those were authorized. 128 were denied. 76 of them were pending. And over 1,100, there was no communication back to the Sheriff's Department on what happened with that case.
All right.
That's not supported.
You might as well stand there, Mr. Miller. There's the next question.
Well,
You
you mentioned my name.
Did he mention?
Yeah, I mentioned his name.
Mr. Bill? Okay. 1 minute.
See what I mean? Come on. Imagine prosecuting attorney saying, do not call. This is complete and utter nonsense and a made-up lie. I had to fight with the County Board of Commissioners to get funding to make sure I had prosecutors available after hours, 24/7. That's evenings, 3 o'clock in the morning, and weekends. And we now have prosecuting attorneys available 24/7 because of me. I have the budget now where prosecuting attorneys are available 24/7 to each and every law enforcement agent out there. As to the case filers, John, here's from the County Board of Commissioners. For the last 10 years, each and every single case authorized in prior administrations, yours and mine, they're all here. The stats don't lie.
Mr. Miller, the next question is for you.
Maurice, before we do that, has anybody got any questions? Their cards filled out?
Anybody have any index cards that they'd like?
If you raise your hand, we'll come by and grab them, put those in the routine.
Does anybody have a postcard that they need a postcard? Raise your hand if you need a postcard. Okay. We will continue. Mr. Miller, the next question is for you. The opioid crisis is an issue here in Lapeer as it is throughout the country. How, if at all, can the County Prosecutor's Office help address this issue?
Great question. We have a lot of community resources. It takes a community's resources in order to turn someone's life in the right direction who is suffering from addiction. Addiction is a horrible thing to suffer. I have represented the prosecuting attorney's office in cases where there is an individual who is suffering addiction. And what you usually see is not a drug charge that's associated with that individual. It's a theft charge. Is typically how that happens. When that person gets incarcerated, their family members will show up crying in court because they're devastated that this individual has been incarcerated and the mistakes that they have made, the poor choices that they have made. We have community resources, Families Against Narcotics, Catholic Charities, Citizens Probation Council. There are an abundance of resources available to an individual. When that person suffers that initial arrest, I often had to tell family members, the best place for that person right now is probably to be incarcerated for the time being. Because at least you know that way they won't overdose. At least you know that way they won't be out using drugs. And that's a difficult conversation to have with loved ones of an individual because they're in this position where they don't want to see that person suffer that harm. But you have to remind them, would you rather see them incarcerated for now and have the rest of their life, or have them out using and have them run the risk of overdose? The opioid epidemic, I have another thought on that. My administration prosecuted a doctor in this community who was illegally writing scripts. Drug Enforcement Agency was investigating this individual. We charged him with felony distribution of a controlled substance causing death. That case, to my knowledge, was in about 2016. It's outgoing. I think they have yet to try it, but it resulted in one of the largest drug forfeitures in Lapeer County history. $250,000 that I brought back to law enforcement.
Mr. Sharkey, you have 2 minutes.
Repeat the question.
Question is, the opioid crisis is an issue here in Lapeer County as it is throughout the country. How, if at all, can the County Prosecutor's Office help address this issue?
Thank you. We have an opioid crisis in Lapeer County, no different than we do across this country. Prosecuting attorney has to use good judgment and discretion. We have a social problem. Those who use drugs and abuse drugs and do so on their own volition is one thing. We have those who do so because of their addiction. These are issues that are really beyond my skills, knowledge, and training as an attorney. Now, what I do recognize is that these people need help. At the same time, they're committing crimes. What I believe is the best way to do that is to this extent. I think I saw a moment there where John and I might have agreed on something. If you go out to our jail, you can see that we house 120 people there, but we've really become a detox facility. Those who are there because of their drug addiction. They can only get there because of a criminal offense that they've committed. What we see in the prison system, as well locally, is drug use, drug addiction, criminal offenses, and how do we deal with them. I've introduced a program that has been a legislative initiative many years back. It's called the 7411 program. What's good about that program is that those individuals who commit crimes because of social issues, social addiction issues, have an opportunity to get that criminal conviction or criminal act off their record if they go through treatment and get better. It's a hard thing to try to figure out for a solution, but it's a combination of sobriety, forced sobriety, treatment, and an opportunity to earn a disposition that is favorable, that does not haunt them with a criminal conviction.
I think we'll move right on to the next question from Mr. Sharkey. Which programs or policies do you believe are the best to keep people from being incarcerated? It's a policy.
You have enough water.
Pardon?
You have enough water.
Another water? I guess I do. See if we have another water. Yeah, here you go.
Oh. Thank you. Apologize for that.
That's a good idea.
Sure. The answer that I just gave fits to this question as well. What has been fundamentally wrong with the criminal justice system is what I call the wholesale discounting of criminal offenses by those who commit crimes. We have a 97% plea bargain rate in the state of Michigan for cases. Cases need to be resolved short of a trial. And there are about 5 different programs that I've introduced as the prosecuting attorney that work along the lines of diversionary or deferral programs. These give people the opportunity to turn their life around and do so on the back end of the criminal process instead of discounting on the front. There's something beneficial to somebody who actually goes through the effort and earns something. And by a 7411 drug program, a Homes Youthful Training Act program, these are opportunities for people to get the treatment they need, and hopefully, we don't see them again. But we've got that fixed. That problem is solved. Where we need to focus is on those cases that are of such a significant issue that they belong in the Department of Corrections. And those types of cases have to be addressed, and they can't be discounted in such a way that this community is jeopardized and the safety and security of this community is at risk. Those who are repeat offenders, those who commit violent offenses, they need to go to the Michigan Department of Corrections And the resources that are available to them at the state is where those funds need to go, not locally. We don't need to spend money on those that cannot benefit from the services that are available at the state level.
Your time is up. Really, 2 minutes for Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I've always maintained that a prosecuting attorney's job is to be the gatekeeper of justice. You're really at the forefront of who is supposed to be in the Department of Corrections, who has an opportunity of rehabilitation, who's going to go to county jail. It's your discretion. It's really in your control as to what plea bargain you offer an individual, as to what direction they're going to head. If that plea bargain is a Department of Corrections plea offer with a shorter sentence potential than what the judge may impose under the offense they were charged with, that's where that process goes. The legislature has afforded us tools, 7411, Homes Useful Training Act. Those have been around for a long time. Those really apply to first-time offenders. So you have these categories of defendants who are first-time offenders, and then you have the other category of defendants who are repeat offenders. And maybe those repeat offenders don't have the tools, maybe they don't have the skills, maybe they're not deserving of anything other than the Department of Corrections. But there's also those few individuals who may be deserving of that. And that's why the discretion of this office, the prosecuting attorney, is so critical. Because you really have a lot of influence over the direction of a person's life. And when that person comes to you, their attorney comes to you, and they're asking for a deal, sometimes you have to say no. You have to take your chances at trial. Because I can't offer you that deal. You have too much history. You have too much repeat offenses. Too many. So those are the difficult choices that we face, but I still maintain that people that are first-time offenders ought to be given the opportunity to turn their lives in a positive direction. Because that can be powerful in their lives and be a lasting impression in their lives.
All right, we're going to move on to question number 9 in this one. For Mr. Miller, what, if any, additional resources are needed for the prosecutor's office from the county government?
You know, it's always nice to have unlimited resources, right? If we all had unlimited checking accounts, we could live lives freely and without restraint. We have limited resources in government. It's our job as servants and leaders in government to apply those resources as effectively and efficiently as we can to get the most bang for your buck. Not our buck, it's your dollar, tax dollars worth. When you are a prosecuting attorney, one of the ways we ran such an efficient office was to utilize interns, bring another generation of people into the practice of law, bring another generation of people that are learning into the office of prosecuting attorney and show them what a fulfilling career that can be. And so the trick is, with limited resources and limited funding from our taxpayers, we don't want you guys to pay a whole bunch of money and not get the results that you deserve, is to recruit new talent, teach new talent, teach young individuals to come in when they're third-year law students. Bring them in. Get them interested in the practice of law. Because I can tell you, when I was in that position, I didn't think criminal practice was my forte. But after doing it for a couple of days, I loved it. So sometimes you just have to show people that. But that is a benefit to taxpayers. Because those interns can come in, they can help carry the workload. They can do these things and learn the job. And then they could ultimately be a new hire potentially, if all that works out. So you have to think outside the box. You can't just come to county commission and say, well, we need to pay everybody, you know, this wage. They're at $50,000 a year starting. We need to start at 75. We just don't have the resources for it. It would be nice if we did, but you have to think creatively to come up with suggestions and ideas on how to work around those obstacles. And I have those.
Mr. Sharkey?
Could you repeat the question?
Sir. What, if any, additional resources are needed for the prosecutor's office from the county government?
Let me start by saying, here is the copy of the budget published by the County Board of Commissioners in their second, or they do this every 2 years. For the year 2018 year, the prosecuting attorney's budget was $1,435,000. At the end of the year, I was able to come in under budget at $87,971. There wasn't another county department that saved the county as much money as I did. $87,971. We need money to do the job. Unfortunately, part of the problem is that we don't have any particular way to present a request that is an objective way of doing so. In other words, there is no particular standard. Another document that I have that is published by the Prosecuting Attorneys Association tells us that the way that appears to determine the number of prosecuting attorneys for each of the 83 counties is based on population. Population hardly seems as an efficient measure to determine what is in the best interest of the local community to make sure that your prosecuting attorney's office is properly funded. But I'm proud of what I've been able to do, and I could talk about in many ways on how we've made things much more efficiently, but I'm kind of the guy who doesn't whine about it, doesn't cry about it. I make it work, and I'm quite proud of what we've been able to do, and the numbers show it.
All right. That was, you were the first?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll go to the next one. Next question will be for Prosecutor Sharkey. The state legislature is contemplating enacting legislation relating to a simple application for expungement of criminal records for certain felonies and misdemeanors. Would you be in favor of this? Why or why not?
The legislature has many creative ways of giving people a second chance. There is the 2 programs that we talked about. The 7411 for first-time drug offenders, the Home Youthful Training Program, the 7411 for drug offenders, first-time drug offenders, not drug deliverers, not drug manufacturers. The same is true for youthful offenders. Some punk kid who steals a skateboard out of the neighbor's garage, that's a felony offense. A Home Youthful Training offense is an appropriate disposition for that type of matter. That, in effect, works the same way an expungement does. So I've been in favor of expungements. My job at the prosecuting attorney's office, I handle each and every expungement case that comes through. And those cases are those that I encourage. The statute requires that they present proof they've turned their lives around. And that's something that I make sure and hold the petitioner responsible to present those proofs. Not everybody gets a second chance just because the statute permits the opportunity to do so.
Okay. Mr. Miller, 2 minutes.
I agree with conditions, right? I don't know that every kind of criminal conviction is deserving of a expungement or free pass. That's why we have certain more severe crimes. Criminal sexual conduct, in my opinion, would not be one of those. Most of those crimes require some sex offender registration to follow them after that conviction. So, you know, depending as the question was phrased, depending on what those crimes are, absolutely. We already have diversionary programs in place that have been in place in Lapeer County and are oftenly referenced by the courts and judges. Diversionary programs, there's retail fraud, there's a variety of those. There's a litany of misdemeanor offenses that are eligible for first-time offenders. So that's not a new concept for prosecution. That's been around a long time. If either by way of being a prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney, you see an individual come across, it's their first-time offense, and they're charged with a misdemeanor, there's a variety of diversionary programs that they can get that free pass on. What you have to watch for as a prosecutor, though, is the people that have already had that free pass, right? You don't get two. You know, depending on how that law is structured, it could be very beneficial to certain individuals. But as I mentioned before, as a prosecutor, it's my job to be your gatekeeper of justice. Who's in and who's out. Who gets that second chance and who does not. So that's why discretion is so important in our position. And then it's also working with the judges. There's drug courts. There's mental health courts. We have these programs in Lapeer County. We can utilize those, and oftentimes those result in the same kind of outcome. So it's not really a new concept. It's something that's been around, and it requires a prosecutor that can think in a variety of different circumstances to offer the best resolution that meets the interests of the people.
Okay. Mr. Miller, this next question is for you. What is the relationship between the prosecutor's office and the local police agencies and probation and parole? And you can go one step further, the Department of Corrections to county jail.
You're asking what the relationship is now?
Yeah, and what steps, if any, are needed to ensure continued success or improvement in that relationship?
Well, as I mentioned it earlier, first of all, you can't tell law enforcement that don't call us. You can't ask us these legal questions. Law enforcement will tell you we're not lawyers. We don't have the training. We don't have the training in constitutional law. We haven't passed the bar exam. Number one, we have to be able to support law enforcement. That is my first and foremost priority. That is what the prosecuting attorney is, the top law enforcement official in our local structure of government, county level. Prosecuting attorney needs to be available to law enforcement to answer those questions 24/7 a day. You know, when I was chief assistant prosecutor, I fielded those calls on my own rotation, as well as if any other prosecutor couldn't do it that week, I'd fill in and do them. Had numerous calls like that. The benefit you get from that is you get a very close working relationship with law enforcement. You know the officers that you're working with, they know you. You can have this working relationship, and when you have a working relationship with people, it makes the job that much easier for everyone. And that's important to have and foster. You also have to have that interaction with courts. When I was chief assistant prosecutor, we had just set up the mental health court in Lapeer County. We participated in that program. When I was chief assistant prosecutor, we had identified a gaping hole in the circuit court defendant judgments of sentence. So these are where costs of prosecution, restitution to the victim, court costs, all these things are pulled in together. We had identified a system to work with the court to try to get that money paid back to the court, get it back into the taxpayers' coffers, right? You don't want to run a court at a deficit if you don't have to. Or if you do have to, you want to run it at a minimal deficit. We implemented a whole program to do that. Right here, I'll post it on my Facebook page and on my website if you want to reference it.
Okay. Mr. Sharkey.
Would you repeat the question?
So, what is the relationship between the prosecutor's office and the local police agencies and the Probation Control Department, including the county jail? What steps, if any, are needed to ensure continued success or improvement?
I don't know where this allegation is about do not call a prosecutor. You have to understand that I was a defense attorney before I became the prosecuting attorney. And the story was that if you wanted to talk to a prosecutor, if it wasn't a court scheduled event, you had to make an appointment. I spent a over 30 years in private practice with an office on the Main Street of Lapeer, a small community. I had an open door policy. When I was a practitioner, if you needed a lawyer and you needed to talk to me, and you didn't have an appointment, you came in, you got it. And if I wasn't there, or if I was in a different meeting, or on the phone, I never let anybody leave. I took care of them on an open door basis. We have an open file basis. We have an open door basis. Police officers do not have to make appointments with any of my prosecutors or myself. The door is always open. The doors are never locked. You can come in at any time. Now, can I say that there isn't a police officer who isn't happy? Yeah, we make them work. We make them do proper investigation. When I started reviewing cases, I was having police officers come in and I was saying, how come this witness hasn't been interviewed? How am I supposed to proceed if this witness we don't know the statement? Well, why would we interview him? You guys, the past administration, they just let him out. If they're not happy with me because I make them work, I make no apology for them. And I don't think it's true, because I've never heard that.
All right, move to the next question. This, I believe, is for you, Mr. Prosecutor. What do you plan to do to ensure your office is open to assist all citizens and to enforce all laws? Basically, a follow-up to the last statement, I guess.
Yeah, the previous answer kind of works for the same thing. Again, when I say this, I mean this sincerely. I mean it authentically. As a private attorney, I handled over 6,000 files. In my career as a private attorney, handling over 6,000 files, I never had a grievance against me. I never had a malpractice claim against me. My success rate was nearly 100% on all cases. And I had an open door. I don't know how you survive in a small community like Lapeer County with your business on the main street of town. The building doesn't have wheels on it. You cannot run and hide. You need to deal with your clients, and you need to deal with them on a face-to-face basis. And they need to trust you, and they need you to be available. I use those same basic principles of a successful law practice and carried those over to the practice for the county of Lapeer. My door is always open. I'm available 24/7. My prosecuting attorneys are all available 24/7. Door is open. The relationship, as far as I know, is very good.
Mr. Hill, 2 minutes.
Don't be misled. We had an open door policy. I always had an open door policy. I was in district court. Attorneys or defendants were there. They could just grab me and ask me a question. When I was handling circuit court docket, you could ask me, any attorney could come up and ask me a question about any single file that was up on docket that day. I could tell you exactly the basic facts of it, exactly the offer, the issues with the case, any question you want to know about it. So don't be misled about these statements about being unavailable. Certainly isn't the circumstance whatsoever. There is an acumen of business that says, hey, if you want my dedicated time, give me a call. Let's make a time that's convenient for both of us. And that's having an efficient working office. And that's just ordinary business practice. Most of my clients and most of law enforcement have my personal cell phone number. They can call me, and I field their responses, I field their texts all the time. I've been on call with law enforcement in Northern Ireland. I've had law enforcement call me after I was the chief assistant prosecutor to get advice because they couldn't get it. And so are some of the other people that I know that were in that position. It's about those relationships and about trust. And I have that trust. You go ask an officer, you ask who they want to be in court with on the day that their case is being heard in front of a judge, and you will resoundingly get the answer they would rather be standing next to me.
Next question will be for you, Mr. Miller. What is something about yourself that no one knows, but you're willing to share? For example, any extracurricular activities such as playing guitar or some athletic event, music, entertainment?
That's a refreshing question I wasn't expecting tonight, so I'm happy to field that. That's an easy one. Boy, just talk about playing one right out of the park. That's a good one. Those of you who don't know me, gosh, I grew up on a farm in Mayfield Township. I still operate the farm. We plant about 300 acres of corn and soybeans. I still run that farm. My son Mitchell and Mason here help me, and they run that farm with me, with my dad. I love working on the farm. It's probably my number one favorite thing to do. Love riding horses. That's one thing he and I have in common. We both enjoy our horses. Love riding my horse around the farm. The one thing nobody knows about me, you might know this just from the community center. I have 9 toes. My nickname in college was 9 toes. I lost a toe, a pinky toe, in a boating accident when I was in 1st grade. So that's a nickname. Something nobody knows about me. But don't show up in court and go, hey, 9 toes. I appreciate that.
All right. Prosecutor Sharkey, same question.
Repeat the question, please.
Okay. The question is, what is something about yourself that no one knows but you are willing to share today? And I know you, and I know Mr. Miller. We know you're on the posse, and things of that nature. Explain to them what you do.
I would rather follow the line of a little bit of levity here, considering detention in which this debate has taken place. When my daughter in the back here saw the question, I think she knew exactly what the answer would be. And for whatever reason, I cannot hum. I cannot hum. I don't know what it is. Maybe in my childhood I've been scarred. I was an altar boy from the 4th grade to the 12th grade. I sang in the choir. I'm the only kid in the entire history of the Catholic Church that got kicked out of the choir because I could not hum. Now, after years and years of therapy, that's a joke, right? Here, I work. That's what I work. That's all I seem to do, and this job as the Lapeer County Prosecutor, I put my heart and soul in it. And you can ask my family where I am. Just ask my wife where I am when it's dinner time. And that's where I am. I'm working. Maybe that's a little something strange, but my heart is in it. I'm passionate about the profession. I love what I do, and I am quite confident that I'm doing the best job this county could ask from any prosecutor. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to...
Maurice, got a question come in online?
Good.
I'm not sure who this is. You can determine who this is for, but the question is, how involved should the prosecutor's office be with the previously mentioned community resources? What is the current involvement, or where do you think the current involvement should be with FAN, drug court, mental health court? And do you feel that these are being used to the fullest extent, and are we supporting these community services?
Okay, that's for Prosecutor Sharkey.
That was a long question, Bill. I'm not going to have you repeat it.
Sure.
No, we're not going to.
Okay.
We're not going to here. There are lots of resources. I touched on it a little bit here about what we have in this community, and it's no different any place in the entire country. We have societal issues. Those issues that related to drug addiction, These are needs society's help to fix these. But somehow, in the maze of all of it, we have made these criminal offenses, and we're looking for societal solutions in the criminal context. That doesn't work too well. In order for there to be a real solution, real remedy to issues like families against narcotics, the Child Advocacy Center, the elderly abuse panel that I sit on, and many other positions as the prosecuting attorney, these are all societal issues here. And I support them, I contribute them, I put my own funds into these, and I'm very supportive. We have the opportunity for a sobriety court, a drug court, a veterans court, a mental health court, and we need to rely on those who have expertise in these areas to make sure that those are effectively used programs that are not used in a way that many times we see that are just a way to bypass the consequences of the criminal justice system. I can talk specifically about each and every one of those programs. I'm very supportive is the point, but I will tell you, frankly, they're not programs for everyone, and I have my reasons. I've set forth the criteria for all of those types of programs.
Okay. 2 minutes for Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I think the overarching question is, where does the rubber meet the road, right? Remember I said before, the job of the prosecuting attorney is to be a gatekeeper of justice. So these alternative programs, these families against narcotics, the things that the Child Advocacy Center does to facilitate investigations of crimes against children, those are resources that the prosecutor's office must embrace. We can't afford to incarcerate everyone. You can't. There's not enough tax money. We need to try to focus on rehabilitating as many of those individuals as we can, and then deciding which ones aren't deserving of that rehabilitative effort and sending them the other way. The president of Families Against Narcotics interviewed with me about a month ago. It's on my Facebook page. Elect Miller for Lapeer County Prosecutor. She hasn't heard from the prosecutor's office in a year. That is a relationship that needs to be fostered and cultivated. You've got to embrace those agencies. Ask them, reach out to them, direct victims' families to them, direct defendants to them. Utilize those resources. Child Advocacy Center. I don't know that there's much relationship there with the prosecutor's office. When I was chief assistant prosecutor, I held a seat on the board of directors, and I was at every single meeting. And I participated in all those, abundance of those cases. So I think that, as I alluded to earlier, the overarching question is, where does the rubber meet the road? And that's why the job of prosecuting attorney, I think, is the most important job in the county. Because you're the kind of individual that has the discretion to say, you can go this way, or we need you to go that way. And that's why it's so important.
Did you respond? You mentioned me.
Yeah. Sure. 1 minute.
Let's be clear here again. I support these programs here, but I'll be frank about it all. They're not for everyone. And I can sense by what I hear that these are something that everyone should go to. They don't. There are those that I have to deal with in the criminal justice system, first-time offenders. We know what to do with them. We know what to do with the second-time offender. Where we have the problem is when it comes to a third-time offender. Third-time offender and beyond are those types of criminal offenders that do not get the benefit of the local services. They need to move on. They need to move on to the Department of Corrections. And I'm not going to waste our resources as the prosecuting attorney, send someone who has 5 priors, 3 priors, 10 priors, 20 priors, 30 priors.
Mr. Sharkey?
Yeah.
Time is up.
They belong someplace else.
Next question is for you, Chief Magistrate. All right. I think this is the last question before we have a summation, all right? So this one deals with the fundamental basis of arrest, search, and seizure. The Fourth Amendment. All right, we should all be aware of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. Article 1, Section 11 of the 1963 Michigan Constitution prescribes the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by open affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. All right. We all know that law, right? That's fundamental constitutional law. In view of the current events, what steps would you take to prosecute a police officer for alleged misconduct to an individual?
And that has something to do with the search and seizure.
It has to do with the process of executing a warrant and misuse of the violation of the Fourth Amendment. Just, if in fact that is the case, how do you analyze that?
The Constitution protects us from our individual freedoms and our individual liberties. The Fourth Amendment protects us from unreasonable searches and seizures. A police officer is a member of the government. The Bill of Rights and the Constitution protect us against the government. A police officer who wants to come into your house, wants to come into your car, they need probable cause. And that probable cause is not something that they are left to determine on their own. That requires judicial intervention. If you're a police officer, you want to go in a house, you want to go in a car, you want to go in a garage, you want to go in a barn, you want to go in a building, you need a search warrant. Probable cause is the standard, which is the low standard. As that relates to the issues today, I'm not sure how you do that. We've got the COVID issue, we have the protests, we have those who are protesting peacefully, we have those who are committing criminal acts by looting and rioting. But if there was a suspect and that particular person happened to be in hiding some evidence or concealing some evidence, the Constitution requires that the government agent get a search warrant from the judge.
Mr. Miller, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to try to explain it in lay terms so it's as easy as possible to understand. Because I think it really is a fairly straightforward process. But lawyers are good at making things complicated, so I try to make this as simple as possible. So you have a Fourth Amendment issue. You have a government agency that wants to investigate something that you have a reasonable expectation of privacy to. So they have to demonstrate probable cause that there is a crime afoot, or there's an exception. There's constitutional exceptions to that requirement in order to obtain the evidence against the individual they're seeking to bring charges for. In real simple terms, there's this body of law called Fruit of the Poisonous Tree, and it's real simple. That just means if government overreaches, it doesn't play by those rules of probable cause, that evidence gets excluded by the judge. So the question really is two questions conjoined together there, because the Fourth Amendment issue is, as I think Mr. Sharkey agrees, I don't think that's really a corollary of what's going on with law enforcement officers that are committing crimes in the course of being officers, essentially, right? I do think the system worked as it should have. Those officers did the wrong thing, they're being charged with crimes, right? If that issue came to my prosecutor's office, it presents a conflict that you have to be aware of. If I'm working with those officers all the time, and they're my witnesses in cases, I can't bring charges against them. So the recourse for that is you have to petition the Attorney General of the state of Michigan and say, hey, we need a special prosecutor to handle this investigation against this officer that I work with all the time. And that is the constitutional way to address that issue if it comes up in my community.
All right. With that, we have concluded. I believe there's no other questions from the audience. Is there one?
Well, I didn't write it down, but I just, with everything that's going on in the world, and this is for both of you guys, I don't know how much you want to comment, but I look at what's going on in Seattle, where they literally have taken over part of town. These people are, they don't want to be a part of the United States. I see we had a very peaceful protest, which I was very happy to see. We had a very peaceful protest in Lapeer last week. It says, to me, it says enormous things about the community that we live in. I'm very proud to live in Lapeer County, and I know both you guys are. But my question to you is, I have family that are in law enforcement, and the bashing and the beating and the just smearing of these people that put their lives on the line every day for us, it really bothers me. And I know you both worked with them in the past. Can I just get kind of your thoughts on what's going on and maybe how you feel Lapeer County is doing in that formula? How you think we're doing, and if you think we could make any improvements, what might they be?
How do I say this here? There are always a few bad apples that make it bad for the rest. By and large, the law enforcement agencies that I'm aware of do their very best to be honorable, do these things by the book. They are a rule of law society. I take that very serious. I also happen to have first-hand experience. I wear a uniform. I've been the president of the Lapeer County Prosecuting Attorney, the Lapeer County Sheriff's Office. I do ride a horse. I wear a uniform. Now, we don't have arrest power, but the public really doesn't know that. They come up to me quite often and say, I appreciate the work you do. I honor your service. We park cars many times. Mr. Kemp said the same thing when he saw me here. So I know what it is like to be with a uniform and dealing with the public. But I think the exception is the rule. The bad police officer, which we saw, is the exception. By and far, the individual police officers that I know take their job very serious, take their responsibilities very serious. None of them are getting rich doing it. There is a tremendous personal sacrifice that they give to their communities to do the job. Firemen, police officers, EMT, emergency people, all of these people put their life on the line, and it isn't for a paycheck.
Mr. Miller.
I've been on the same posse with Mr. Sharkey. I think he misspoke because it's not the sheriff's posse now. It's the Lapeer County Mounted Posse. They had separated ties with the sheriff back in the early 2000s, I think it was. But nevertheless, I'm on the board of directors for the 100 Club of Genesee, Shiawassee, and Lapeer counties. That organization, and I'm the executive secretary for that organization as well, and co-chairman of the grants committee. The grants that we dole out to first responders, not just law enforcement, fire, those agencies, everyone in Lapeer County is eligible. All of our agencies are eligible. And I've been a member of that since about 2011. I've been involved in that organization. We dole out safety grants. They can utilize this money for safety equipment. We draw a line and say, no offensive equipment. You can't buy guns with this stuff. You can't buy tasers, anything like that. But we provide ballistic vests. We provide flashlights. We provide thermal imaging equipment to fire agencies that are responding to fires. We provide a variety of things to those agencies. I've been involved in backing law enforcement for a long time now. I believe that just as Mr. Cavett had stated, I'm extremely proud of the law enforcement community we have in Lapeer. And And I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to them for their service and their sacrifice. As stated, they don't make a lot of money doing this stuff, and they put their lives at risk every day to protect us. It's an incredibly honorable thing. I think that in closing on that remark, I would just point out that law enforcement is in need of our support now more than ever. They really are. They're being criticized every day in the media. They're not deserving here of that. Nobody here did that. We do have those bad apples somewhere out there in other parts of this country. But that shouldn't be applied uniformly across our country and across our community, because we've got super good quality people here.
All right. I believe in the closing summations, you started, so I'm going to have you start with your closing statement. You have up to 5 minutes, and then you will follow, and that will conclude our forum today.
Thank you. I'm going to take a brief drink of water. I don't think I need 5 minutes. I'm running for prosecuting attorney. I'm asking for your vote. I think we are in need of new leadership in this county. I think law enforcement deserves a breath of fresh air in that leadership. They deserve a prosecuting attorney that's going to support them day in and day out, and a prosecuting attorney, the elected prosecutor, that is going to go down there and work with those individuals in courtrooms every single day, not just occasionally. Try cases with them every single day. These are the things that I did as your chief assistant, and I loved it. You've heard the phrase, the toughest job you've ever loved? I can say that about my time as being the prosecutor, the chief assistant prosecutor in this county. I'm looking forward to getting back to that role. I'm looking forward to getting back to supporting law enforcement. Having been throughout this county at countless events, fundraisers, most of you know, I'm better known in the community as Mr. Dana Miller, my beautiful wife Dana being the treasurer for a long time here. She's not just a politician. We're not just people that show up in election years to fundraisers and community events. We've been there year after year after year. We don't show up in election year, we show up every year. Habitat for Humanity, we are supporters of this community. We are people that believe in doing the right thing for this community. And we are prepared to go back and put my resources and my skills back to work for Lapeer County. I'm excited about that opportunity. But having 2 attorneys stand here before you for the last, we're pushing on an hour and a half here, we could do this all day. We could beat on each other all day because we do it all the time in courtrooms. That's not what you came to see, right? You came to hear the reasons why one of us is the better candidate. I have no doubt in my mind I'm the better candidate. But don't take my word for it. Stop a law enforcement officer. Stop a fireman. And ask them candidly. Don't put them on the spot publicly. Ask them candidly. Who are you going to vote for? And let them tell you the reasons why. Their answer is John Miller. And that's the sincere truth. I encourage you to have that conversation with those individuals. Don't take my word for it. Ask an officer. And by the way, when you ask them, thank them for their service to our community during this difficult time. Please vote. Thank you. Mr. Sharkey.
I'm proud of my record. I'm proud of my reputation. I'm proud of my successes. I'm proud of the experiences that I've had to serve humbly people who live in this community. I did it for over 30 years in the private sector. I've done it for almost the last 4 years as the Lapeer County Prosecuting Attorney. That hasn't changed. I look at the case from the point of view of the victim. I look at it from the point of view as to how a case can be prosecuted. I look at it for what is the best disposition. I think about how the resources for the county of Lapeer can be best spent. You heard how I came in under budget. You didn't hear anybody squawk or cry about the way I did business. I didn't cry or complain. I took care of this community and kept them safe. I have years of experience trying cases. I have years of experience developing relationships with people in this community, and I have what I believe is a trusted reputation to do the job. I can handle just about any case there is. Doesn't matter if it's just a minor case of driving without a license, all the way to a murder of the first degree. And that only comes from trying hundreds of cases and representing over thousands of people. Mr. Miller, on the other hand, is a part-time lawyer. He dabbles in the practice of law. He is not a full-time lawyer. He was not a full-time prosecutor. He kept his private business while he worked in the prosecutor's office. When he says he was responsible for 6,000 files or whatever it is, 500, he took a different approach than I did. I'll be frank with you. I'm not easy to deal with when it comes to protecting this community. If I'm defending a victim, I'm going to make sure that the maximum is what the defendant is going to get. I don't back down. I don't care if I'm under pressure from the judge. I don't care if I'm under pressure from the County Board of Commissioners. I am not going to back down to protect this community. And that's my reputation. That's my experience. And I prove it each and every day. I ask you too to consider me, and I'll be humbly appreciative if you were to vote for me. And I feel that I have the confidence to ask you, because I'm the best qualified to do this job. Thank you.
I thank the candidates for their participation, and I know it's a little rough in the beginning, but I think we in order to conclude our meeting, first, the next thing on the agenda, which I forgot last week, our last meeting, is the closing prayer, the summary of upcoming events. So, Carol, I ask you to come speak before the microphone, whichever way you'd like to do it.
They didn't, so I'm going to. I have a loud voice. Excuse me. The summary of events will be the following forums held right here at the fairgrounds. Thursday, June 25th, the 40th Circuit Court Judge at 7 o'clock. Thursday, July 9th, U.S. Congressman, 10th District at 7 p.m. This one, the location may change, so watch the your email and the web page for Lapeer County Tea Party web page, because it could change to Goodman Township, but we're not sure about that yet. And would you please stand for our closing prayer? Father, thanks for your guidance and presence tonight. We need your wisdom in voting for the candidate we feel is the best choice for this position. May everyone leave this meeting in the safety of your angels and care. In Jesus' name, amen.
Just before the adjournment, I just want to remind everybody that this is live. This was live streamed, and will also be connected on the webpage by YouTube for future broadcasts. If you want to review and see more clearly the responses, I thank you for your